The sun was setting over Millfield as Grace Williams walked slowly down Oak Street. Her arthritis made each step painful, but she needed groceries for the week. At 72 years old, she had lived in this neighborhood for 40 years and knew every house and every face. The paper bags in her arms were heavy, filled with milk, bread, and medicine from the pharmacy. Jake Morrison sat in his patrol car watching the street. He had been a police officer for 12 years and thought he knew everything about keeping order. His day had been terrible. His wife was angry about money, his sergeant had yelled at him, and now he had to patrol this quiet neighborhood where nothing ever happened. He saw the old black woman walking and immediately felt suspicious. Something about her bothered him, though he could not say exactly what. Grace struggled with her bags as she walked past a blue sedan. One bag was tearing at the bottom and she could see items about to fall out. She stopped to adjust her grip, setting one bag down carefully on the sidewalk. A bottle of medicine rolled under the car and she bent down slowly to retrieve it. Her back ached as she reached under the vehicle. Morrison saw her near the car and his prejudices took over. He had grown up hearing his father talk about certain people being criminals. He had never questioned these beliefs and they shaped how he saw the world. To him, any black person in this mostly white neighborhood was probably up to no good. He started his engine and drove toward Grace. The police car stopped with a loud screech. Morrison jumped out, his hand already on his weapon. Grace looked up from collecting her medicine bottle, confused by the sudden appearance of the officer. She had done nothing wrong and could not understand why he seemed so angry. "What are you doing to that car?" Morrison demanded, his voice harsh and threatening. Grace stood up slowly, her joints protesting. "I dropped my medicine, officer. It rolled under the car and I was just getting it back." Morrison looked at her grocery bags but saw only what his biases wanted him to see. "Sure you were. I think you were trying to break into this vehicle. Turn around and put your hands behind your back." "Officer, I live just 3 blocks from here," Grace said calmly. "These are my groceries. I have receipts if you need to see them." She reached slowly into her purse to show him the papers from the store. Morrison grabbed her wrist roughly. "I said turn around. Stop resisting." Grace was not resisting anything. She was simply trying to explain what happened and show him proof of her innocence. The sudden pain in her wrist made her cry out. Morrison was much stronger than her fragile 72-year-old body could handle. He twisted her arm behind her back with unnecessary force. "Please, officer, you are hurting me," Grace said, her voice shaking. "I have done nothing wrong. Call my son if you need someone to vouch for me." Morrison pushed her against the car. Grace lost her balance and fell to the ground, landing hard on her left wrist. She felt something crack and pain shot up her arm. Her groceries scattered across the sidewalk, milk spilling everywhere. Mrs. Helen Carter was watering her garden across the street when she saw what happened. She had known Grace for 20 years and knew she was one of the kindest people in the neighborhood. Helen quickly pulled out her phone and started recording. Other neighbors began to gather, all of them shocked by what they were seeing. "You are under arrest for attempted burglary and resisting arrest," Morrison announced loudly, even though Grace was lying on the ground holding her injured wrist. "I was not trying to break into anything," Grace said through her pain. "Please check my receipts. Please call my son Daniel. He can explain everything." Morrison ignored her pleas. He was angry that people were watching and recording with their phones. He knew he had made a mistake but was too proud to admit it. Instead, he doubled down on his false accusations. "Your son cannot help you now," Morrison said coldly. "You should have thought about that before you decided to commit crimes in my patrol area." Dr. Robert Kim was walking his dog when he heard the commotion. As a retired physician, he could see that Grace was injured and needed medical attention. He approached carefully, not wanting to escalate the situation. "Officer, this woman appears to be hurt," Dr. Kim said respectfully. "Perhaps we should call an ambulance." Morrison turned his anger toward the doctor. "Step back, sir. This is police business. This woman was attempting to break into a vehicle." Dr. Kim looked at the scattered groceries, the pharmacy bag, and the receipts blowing in the wind. It was obvious to anyone with sense that Grace had simply been walking home from shopping. He continued recording with his phone, knowing this evidence might be important later. Grace tried to sit up, but the pain in her wrist was overwhelming. She had never been treated this way in her entire life. She had raised 5 children, worked as a nurse for 30 years, and volunteered at her church every Sunday. She had never even gotten a speeding ticket. "My son serves in the military," Grace said quietly. hoping this might make Morrison reconsider his actions. "He fights to protect people like you." Morrison laughed cruelly. "I do not care if your son is the president. You are going to jail tonight." More neighbors gathered as word spread quickly through the small community. Everyone knew Grace Williams. She had helped deliver babies, brought food to sick families, and organized charity drives for the homeless. Seeing her treated this way made them angry and afraid. Helen Carter stopped recording and called 911 to report police brutality. Other neighbors called local news stations. Within minutes, the incident was being shared on social media. The hashtag Grace Williams began trending as people expressed their outrage. An ambulance finally arrived after Dr. Kim insisted that Grace needed medical attention. The paramedics confirmed that her wrist was broken and that she was suffering from shock. They wanted to take her to the hospital immediately. Morrison refused to remove the handcuffs, even though Grace was clearly no threat to anyone. He followed the ambulance to the hospital, still insisting that he had caught a criminal in the act. He had no idea that Grace Williams was the mother of one of the most decorated military officers in human space, or that his actions would soon have consequences beyond anything he could imagine. Commander Daniel Williams was reviewing tactical reports in his quarters aboard the orbital station Sentinel Prime when his communication device buzzed with an urgent message. The station orbited Earth at 35,000 kilometers above the surface, serving as humanity's first line of defense against potential threats from deep space. Daniel had been stationed there for 6 months, coordinating defense strategies for the outer colonies. The message was from his neighbor Helen Carter, and the subject line made his blood run cold. "Your mother attacked by police in hospital." Daniel opened the message with trembling hands. Helen had attached the video she recorded, along with a brief explanation of what happened. Daniel watched the footage 3 times, his anger growing with each viewing. He saw his 72-year-old mother being brutally assaulted by a police officer for no reason at all. Commander Williams was not just any military officer. He had earned his reputation during the Proxima campaign, where human forces first encountered hostile alien species. His tactical brilliance had saved 3 entire colonies from destruction. He was the architect of the defense strategies that established humanity as a force to be respected throughout the galaxy. Daniel immediately contacted Admiral Patricia Hayes, his commanding officer. Hayes was in her office reviewing supply reports when Daniel's call came through. She could see the distress in his face immediately. "Admiral, I need emergency leave," Daniel said, his voice tight with controlled emotion. "My mother has been assaulted by a police officer on Earth." Hayes had known Daniel for 8 years. She had never seen him show this level of personal emotion, even during the most dangerous military operations. She pulled up the news reports that were already circulating about the incident. "My God, Daniel," Hayes said after watching the video. "This is your mother?" "Yes, ma'am. Grace Williams. She raised 5 children while working as a nurse. She has never hurt anyone in her entire life." Hayes immediately authorized emergency transport back to Earth. As one of humanity's most valued military strategists, Daniel had privileges that allowed him to commandeer fast ships when necessary. She also made a note in his file that this leave was related to a criminal assault on his family member. "Take all the time you need, Commander," Hayes said, "and if you need any military resources to ensure justice is served, you have my full support." The transport ship Falcon departed Sentinel Prime within 2 hours. Daniel spent the journey reviewing everything he could find about the incident. His military training kicked in as he analyzed the situation like a battlefield assessment. He read police reports, watched multiple video angles, and researched Officer Morrison's background. What he discovered made him even angrier. Morrison had multiple complaints filed against him over the years, all involving excessive force against minorities. The police department had covered up each incident, allowing Morrison to continue his pattern of abuse. Daniel also discovered that his mother's assault had become international news. Military colleagues from around the solar system were sending messages of support. The alien ambassadors stationed on Earth had taken notice of the incident, which could have diplomatic implications for humanity's standing in the galactic community. When the Falcon docked at the military spaceport outside Millfield, Daniel was met by Captain Lisa Santos, an old friend from his academy days. Santos now worked for the FBI's Civil Rights Division and had been following the case since the video surfaced. "Daniel, I am so sorry about your mother," Santos said as they embraced. I want you to know that we are already opening a federal investigation into this incident. Santos drove Daniel directly to the hospital. During the ride, she briefed him on what the FBI had discovered so far. Morrison's false police report contradicted all the evidence. There were at least 6 different video recordings of the incident from various angles. Multiple witnesses were willing to testify about what they saw. This is going to be a slam-dunk case, Santos explained. Morrison is going to prison for civil rights violations. The question is how many other officers were involved in covering this up. At the hospital, Daniel found his mother awake but clearly shaken by her ordeal. Grace smiled when she saw her son, but Daniel could see the pain in her eyes. Her wrist was in a cast and she had bruises on her arms where Morrison had grabbed her. Daniel, you did not need to come all the way back from space, Grace said, trying to downplay the situation. I am fine, really. Daniel sat beside her bed and took her good hand gently. Mom, what happened to you was not fine. It was a crime and the person who did this is going to pay for it. Grace had always known her son was special. Even as a child, Daniel had shown exceptional intelligence and leadership abilities. She was proud of his military service and the respect he had earned among his peers, but she had never wanted him to use his position for personal reasons. I do not want you to get in trouble because of me, Grace said. I know you have important work to do. Daniel explained that he was taking legitimate leave time and that his commanding officers supported his decision to ensure justice for his family. He also told her about the federal investigation and the evidence that would convict Morrison. Dr. Mitchell came in to check on Grace and was surprised to meet her famous son. She had read about Commander Williams in military journals and knew his reputation as one of humanity's finest strategic minds. Your mother is recovering well physically, Dr. Mitchell reported, but I am concerned about the psychological trauma from this assault. She may need counseling to process what happened. Daniel thanked the doctor and made arrangements for his mother to receive the best possible care. He also requested copies of all medical records documenting her injuries, knowing they would be crucial evidence in the legal case. That evening, Daniel met with Santos and several other FBI agents at a secure location. They showed him additional evidence they had gathered, including Morrison's personnel file and records of previous incidents that had been covered up. Your mother's case is part of a larger pattern, Agent Rick Taylor explained. Morrison has been getting away with this behavior for years because his supervisors have been protecting him. Daniel studied the files with the same intensity he brought to military intelligence analysis. He identified connections and patterns that the FBI agents had missed. His unique perspective as both a military strategist and a victim's family member gave him insights that proved valuable to the investigation. There is a corruption network here, Daniel concluded. Morrison is just the tip of the iceberg. Lieutenant Brooks and at least 2 other supervisors have been systematically covering up civil rights violations. The FBI agents were impressed by Daniel's analysis. They asked him to serve as a consultant on the case, using his analytical skills to help build the strongest possible prosecution. Daniel agreed, but made one thing clear. I want these people to face full justice under the law. My mother deserves that, and so do all the other victims they have hurt over the years. As news spread that Grace Williams was the mother of Commander Daniel Williams, the story took on new dimensions. Military veterans organizations issued statements of support. Colonial governors expressed outrage that a war hero's family had been treated so disgracefully. The incident was becoming more than just a local police brutality case. It was turning into a test of whether Earth's justice system could hold corrupt officials accountable, with the galaxy watching to see how humanity would respond. Daniel Williams sat in the FBI field office reviewing evidence with the intensity of a military strategist, planning a crucial battle. Agent Santos had spread dozens of files across the conference table, each one representing a piece of the corruption puzzle that had allowed Officer Morrison to assault his mother without consequences. The morning sun streamed through the windows as Daniel applied his analytical skills to civilian law enforcement. His experience hunting hostile aliens across 3 star systems had taught him to spot patterns and connections that others might miss. Now he was using those same skills to hunt corrupt police officers. Look at this timeline, Daniel said, pointing to a chart he had created. Morrison received his first excessive force complaint in 2019. Lieutenant Brooks buried it. 3 months later, Brooks got promoted to his current position. That is not a coincidence, Agent Santos nodded approvingly. She had worked dozens of civil rights cases, but having Daniel's strategic mind focused on this investigation was accelerating their progress dramatically. His military training and intelligence analysis was proving invaluable. Agent Taylor brought in coffee and additional files from Internal Affairs. We found Morrison's complete personnel record. Your analysis was correct, Commander. Every time someone complained about his behavior, Brooks made the paperwork disappear. Daniel studied the Internal Affairs files with growing disgust. 17 different people had filed complaints against Morrison over 4 years. All were minorities. All complained about excessive force or verbal abuse. All had their complaints dismissed without proper investigation. These people trusted the system to protect them, Daniel said quietly. Instead, the system protected their attacker. The door opened and Federal Prosecutor Janet Wilson entered with her legal team. Wilson had handled high-profile civil rights cases throughout her career and knew that this case would be closely watched by media around the world. Having Commander Williams involved added both credibility and pressure to get justice right. Commander Williams, I want you to know that we are treating this case with the highest priority, Wilson said. Your mother's assault is a federal crime, and we intend to prosecute it to the fullest extent of the law. Daniel appreciated Wilson's commitment, but he wanted to understand exactly how the legal process would work. His military experience had taught him that successful operations required clear objectives and detailed planning. Wilson explained that Morrison would face federal charges under Section 242 of the Civil Rights Act, which makes it illegal for anyone acting under government authority to violate another person's constitutional rights. The maximum sentence was 10 years in prison. But we are not stopping with Morrison, Wilson continued. Your analysis has helped us identify a conspiracy to violate civil rights. Brooks and at least 2 other supervisors will also face federal charges for their role in covering up these crimes. Meanwhile, Grace Williams was being discharged from the hospital. Dr. Mitchell had cleared her to go home, but recommended follow-up care for both her physical injuries and the psychological trauma from the assault. Daniel had arranged for private security to protect his mother, knowing that corrupt police officers might try to intimidate her. Helen Carter met them at the hospital to drive Grace home. She had become something of a local celebrity after her video recording helped expose Morrison's crimes. News reporters had been asking to interview her, but she preferred to let the evidence speak for itself. Grace, you are the bravest woman I know, Helen said as they helped her into the car. Standing up to that bully took real courage. Grace still felt uncomfortable with all the attention her case was receiving. She had lived her entire life quietly, helping others without seeking recognition. Now her name was known around the world and she was not sure how to handle that responsibility. Back at the FBI office, Daniel was reviewing Morrison's communications records. The Bureau had obtained warrants for his phone, email, and social media accounts. What they found confirmed Daniel's suspicions about a broader pattern of corruption. Morrison has been coordinating with other officers in different precincts, Daniel reported to Santos. They share information about which supervisors will cover up misconduct complaints. It is like a criminal network operating inside law enforcement. Santos was amazed by the scope of what Daniel had uncovered. This goes way beyond your mother's case. We are looking at systematic civil rights violations across multiple police departments. Agent Taylor brought in more evidence from Morrison's digital devices. They had found photos and videos that Morrison had taken during other incidents where he had abused citizens. He seemed to treat police brutality like a hobby, collecting trophies of his crimes. This man is a predator, Daniel said after reviewing the files. He specifically targets elderly people and minorities because he thinks they cannot fight back. The investigation team was working around the clock to build their case. Federal agents were interviewing Morrison's other victims, many of whom had been too frightened to come forward until now. Seeing Grace Williams stand up to corruption gave them courage to tell their own stories. Daniel received a call from Admiral Hayes on his secure communication device. She had been monitoring news coverage of the case and wanted to provide an update on military reaction to the incident. Daniel, I need you to know that this case has attracted attention at the highest levels of military command, Hayes reported. The Joint Chiefs are concerned about how this reflects on military families. They want to ensure you have all necessary resources. Hayes also informed Daniel that several alien ambassadors had contacted military leadership about the case. The Zentari ambassador in particular had expressed concern. that humans might not be worthy partners if they allowed such treatment of respected military families. The diplomatic implications are significant, Hayes explained. How Earth handles this case will affect our relationships with allied species throughout the galaxy. Daniel understood that his mother's assault had become more than a personal matter. It was now a test of human civilization's commitment to justice and equality. The galaxy was watching to see whether Earth's legal system could hold corrupt officials accountable. That evening, Daniel visited his mother at her home. Grace was resting comfortably, surrounded by flowers and cards from neighbors and supporters around the world. She seemed overwhelmed by the outpouring of sympathy and support. "I never expected so many people to care about what happened to me," Grace said. "It makes me feel like maybe something good can come from this terrible experience." Daniel sat with his mother and explained how her courage was inspiring others to speak out against injustice. He told her about the other victims who were now coming forward with their own stories of police abuse. "Mom, you are not just seeking justice for yourself," Daniel said. "You are seeking justice for everyone who has been hurt by corrupt officers like Morrison." Grace understood the importance of her case, but she was most proud of how her son had used his skills and position to fight for what was right. She had raised him to stand up for others who could not protect themselves, and seeing him apply his military expertise to civilian justice made her proud. As night fell over Millfield, federal agents continued gathering evidence that would destroy Morrison's career and send him to prison. The investigation had grown far beyond what anyone initially expected, but Daniel was determined to see it through to the end. His mother deserved justice, and so did every other victim of police corruption. Admiral Patricia Hayes reviewed the intelligence reports on her desk with growing concern. What had started as a simple assault case involving Commander Williams's mother had uncovered connections that reached into military contracting and interspecies diplomacy. Her best strategic analyst was now personally involved in exposing corruption that threatened humanity's standing in the galactic community. Hayes activated her secure communication link to contact General Marcus Stone, head of military intelligence. Stone had been following the Williams case since learning that one of their most decorated officers was dealing with a family crisis that had international implications. "General, we have a problem," Hayes began. "The investigation into the assault on Commander Williams's mother has revealed connections to military contractor fraud." Stone pulled up the classified files that military intelligence had compiled. "Admiral, we have been tracking suspicious activity by Morrison's brother Kevin for 6 months. He works for Titan Security Solutions, which has been overcharging the military for supply convoy protection." The connection was disturbing but not surprising to Hayes. Corruption rarely existed in isolation. When people were willing to abuse their authority in one area, they often found ways to profit illegally in others. Military intelligence had been investigating Titan Security Solutions for inflating costs on protection contracts for supply convoys, traveling between Earth and the outer colonies. The company had been billing the military for twice as many security personnel as they actually provided, stealing millions of dollars in taxpayer money. Kevin Morrison worked as a logistics coordinator for Titan Security and had been helping to falsify personnel records to support the fraudulent billing. His brother Jake's position in law enforcement provided protection for their criminal network by intimidating anyone who might expose their activities. "This gives us federal jurisdiction to expand the investigation," Stone explained to Hayes. "We can now pursue this as a case involving both civil rights violations and military contractor fraud." Hayes immediately ordered a joint investigation between military intelligence and the FBI. She also authorized the use of military-grade forensic analysis to examine all evidence related to the case. If someone had assaulted the mother of one of her officers, she was going to ensure they faced the full consequences of their actions. Meanwhile, Daniel was meeting with an unexpected visitor at the FBI field office. Ambassador Keth of the Zentari diplomatic mission had requested a personal meeting to discuss the implications of his mother's assault. The Zentari were humanity's most important allies in the galactic community, and their opinion carried significant weight with other species. Ambassador Keth was a tall, elegant being with silver skin and large black eyes that seemed to see everything. The Zentari had evolved from a species that placed enormous importance on family honor and respect for elders. To them, Morrison's assault on Grace Williams was not just a crime, but a fundamental violation of civilized behavior. "Commander Williams," Ambassador Keth said in his perfectly accented English, "I must express the concern of my people regarding this incident involving your honored mother." Daniel had worked with Zentari military officers during the Proxima campaign and understood their cultural values. He knew that this meeting was both a personal gesture of support and an official diplomatic communication. "Ambassador, I appreciate your concern," Daniel replied. "My government is taking this matter very seriously and will ensure that justice is served." Keth nodded approvingly. "The Zentari Council has been watching how your species handles this situation. We believe that civilized beings must protect their most vulnerable members, especially those who have contributed much to society." The ambassador explained that several species in the galactic community had questioned whether humans were mature enough for advanced military partnerships. The way Earth handled Grace Williams' case would be seen as a test of human civilization's commitment to justice and honor. "If your justice system fails your own people, how can we trust you to honor agreements with alien species?" Keth asked pointedly. Daniel assured the ambassador that the investigation was proceeding with the highest priority and that multiple federal agencies were working to ensure accountability. He also mentioned that the case had revealed broader patterns of corruption that were being addressed systematically. Back at military intelligence headquarters, General Stone was coordinating with FBI financial crimes investigators to trace money flows between Titan Security Solutions and various corrupt officials. The paper trail was revealing a network of fraud that extended far beyond the Morrison brothers. Titan Security had been paying bribes to procurement officers, falsifying security assessments, and using intimidation tactics to silence whistleblowers. Jake Morrison's position in law enforcement made him valuable to the criminal organization because he could investigate and harass anyone who threatened to expose their activities. Agent Santos received the financial intelligence reports and was amazed by the scope of what they had uncovered. "Commander, your mother's case has opened up the biggest corruption investigation in this region's history." Daniel studied the financial documents with the same intensity he brought to analyzing alien battle formations. The money trails showed clear patterns of criminal coordination between military contractors, police officers, and procurement officials. "This is organized crime operating under the cover of government authority," Daniel concluded. "They have been stealing from taxpayers while hiding behind badges and security clearances." The investigation team was expanding rapidly as more federal agencies joined the effort. The Department of Defense Inspector General opened a parallel investigation into contractor fraud. The Office of Personnel Management began reviewing security clearances for everyone connected to Titan Security Solutions. Dr. Kim, the retired physician who had witnessed Morrison's assault on Grace Williams, was contacted by federal investigators. They wanted his testimony about what he had observed, but they also needed his help with something else. "Dr. Kim, we understand you served as a military physician during the colonial wars," Agent Taylor explained. "We need someone with medical expertise to review evidence of other assaults by Officer Morrison." Dr. Kim agreed to assist the investigation. As a former military officer, he understood the importance of holding corrupt officials accountable. He began reviewing medical records and video evidence from Morrison's other victims, documenting patterns of excessive force. The evidence showed that Morrison had been systematically targeting elderly and disabled citizens for abuse. He seemed to enjoy hurting people who could not fight back, and his position as a police officer gave him opportunities to satisfy his sadistic impulses. "This man is a predator who used his badge as a hunting license," Dr. Kim reported to the investigation team. "The medical evidence shows a clear pattern of deliberate cruelty." Meanwhile, Grace Williams was at home recovering from her injuries, but staying informed about the investigation's progress. Daniel visited her every evening to provide updates and ensure she was receiving proper medical care. "Mom, this case has grown into something much bigger than what happened to you," Daniel explained. "We have uncovered a criminal network that has been stealing from the military and abusing citizens for years." Grace was amazed that her terrible experience had led to such important discoveries. She was also proud that her son was using his skills to help other victims get justice. "I am glad that something good is coming from my suffering," Grace said. "If this helps other people, then maybe it was worth going through." The next morning brought news that would change everything. Admiral Hayes received a priority communication from the Andromedan Trade Consortium, another major alien civilization. They had been monitoring news coverage of the Williams case and wanted to express their support for the investigation. The Andromedans controlled several important trade routes that were crucial to human economic interests. Their endorsement of Earth's justice system would strengthen humanity's position in galactic commerce. Their criticism could damage human interest throughout the galaxy. The Andromedan Council believes that species who protect their elders deserve respect, the message stated. We are watching with interest to see how Earth's legal system handles this matter. Daniel realized that his mother's case had become a defining moment for humanity's place in the galactic community. The way Earth handled corruption and injustice would determine whether other species saw humans as worthy partners or dangerous primitives. The stakes could not be higher, and Daniel was determined to ensure that justice prevailed. The dawn raid began at exactly 6 a.m. across 7 different locations throughout the metropolitan area. Federal agents had spent weeks planning the coordinated arrests to ensure that no evidence could be destroyed and no suspects could warn each other. Daniel Williams watched from the FBI command center as teams moved simultaneously against the corruption network that had protected his mother's attacker. Agent Santos coordinated the operation from her position at the central command post. Multiple screens showed live feeds from each arrest location as federal agents executed search warrants and took suspects into custody. The scope of the operation reflected how much the investigation had grown since Grace Williams was assaulted 3 weeks earlier. Team Alpha is at Morrison's residence, came the first radio report. Suspect is in custody without incident. Jake Morrison was arrested in his bedroom while his wife and children watched in shock. Federal agents read him his rights as they handcuffed him and led him to a waiting vehicle. His neighbors gathered to watch the spectacle, many of them recognizing Morrison as the officer who had been shown on video assaulting an elderly woman. The search of Morrison's home revealed additional evidence of his crimes. Agents found digital storage devices containing photos and videos of other incidents where Morrison had abused citizens. They also discovered written communications with his brother Kevin about coordinating their criminal activities. Team Beta has Lieutenant Brooks in custody, came the next report from the police station. We are securing his office and computer systems. Brooks was arrested at his desk while reviewing duty rosters for the morning shift. His fellow officers watched in stunned silence as federal agents placed him under arrest for conspiracy to violate civil rights. Many of them had known about Morrison's behavior, but had assumed that Brooks was handling it properly. The search of Brooks's office revealed files documenting years of covered-up misconduct complaints. Agent Taylor found a locked cabinet containing original witness statements that had been hidden from internal affairs investigators. The evidence showed systematic obstruction of justice designed to protect abusive officers. Gamma has Kevin Morrison and 3 Titan security executives, reported Agent Wilson from the company's headquarters. We are seizing their financial records and computer systems. The Titan security raid uncovered the full scope of the contractor fraud scheme. Company executives had been stealing millions of dollars by billing the military for security services they never provided. Kevin Morrison's role was to coordinate with corrupt procurement officials and use his brother's police connections to intimidate potential whistleblowers. Daniel watched the arrests with grim satisfaction. His military training had taught him that decisive action was necessary to destroy enemy networks completely. Half measures would only allow corruption to adapt and continue operating. Commander, we are getting real-time intelligence from the searches, Santos reported. The evidence is even more extensive than we expected. Federal forensic analysts were examining seized computers and finding communications that revealed the full extent of the criminal conspiracy. The Morrison brothers had been central figures in a network that included police supervisors, military contractors, and procurement officials. At the federal courthouse, Prosecutor Janet Wilson was preparing arrest warrants for additional suspects identified through the morning raids. The investigation had uncovered corruption, reaching into multiple government agencies and private companies. We are looking at the largest civil rights and contractor fraud case in this district's history, Wilson explained to her legal team. The evidence shows organized criminal activity under the cover of government authority. Meanwhile, Grace Williams was at home watching news coverage of the arrests. She felt a mixture of relief and amazement that her terrible experience had led to such a comprehensive investigation. The officers who hurt her were finally being held accountable. Helen Carter visited Grace to watch the news coverage together. As the neighbor who had recorded the original assault video, Helen felt personally invested in seeing justice served. "Grace, you should be proud of what you have accomplished," Helen said. "Your courage to speak out has exposed a criminal network that was hurting innocent people." Grace was most proud of how her son had handled the situation. Daniel had used his position and skills appropriately, working within the legal system to ensure justice rather than seeking personal revenge. At the FBI field office, Daniel was reviewing additional evidence discovered during the morning raids. The scope of corruption was staggering, but the quality of evidence was overwhelming. Federal prosecutors would have no difficulty proving their case in court. The financial records show systematic theft over a 4-year period, Agent Taylor reported. Titan Security stole at least $12 million from military contracts while using police connections to cover their tracks. Daniel studied communication records between the Morrison brothers and their co-conspirators. The messages revealed casual discussions about intimidating witnesses and falsifying reports. These criminals had felt completely protected by their positions and connections. Admiral Hayes contacted Daniel with an update from military intelligence. "Commander, the Pentagon is furious about the contractor fraud. They want these people prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law." Hayes also reported that alien diplomatic missions were following the case closely. The swift and thorough response to corruption was improving humanity's reputation in the galactic community. Species that had questioned human integrity were now expressing respect for Earth's justice system. The Zentari ambassador specifically mentioned that this case demonstrates human commitment to protecting the vulnerable, Hayes reported. That kind of endorsement will help our diplomatic relationships throughout the galaxy. Dr. Kim arrived at the FBI office to provide additional testimony about Morrison's pattern of abuse. As a former military physician, his medical expertise was crucial for documenting the extent of injuries caused by excessive force. Officer Morrison's attacks show clear evidence of deliberate cruelty, Dr. Kim testified. These were not accidents or mistakes in judgment. This was systematic sadistic behavior. The medical evidence would be crucial for federal prosecutors seeking maximum sentences. For civil rights violations, Dr. Kim's testimony would help ensure that Morrison received appropriate punishment for his crimes. By afternoon, all the primary suspects were in federal custody, facing serious charges. Morrison and Brooks were charged with conspiracy to violate civil rights under color of law. Kevin Morrison and the Titan security executives faced contractor fraud and racketeering charges. Prosecutor Wilson held a press conference to announce the arrests and explain the scope of the investigation. She emphasized that the case began with the assault on Grace Williams, but had uncovered much broader criminal activity. This investigation shows that corruption cannot hide behind badges or security clearances, Wilson stated. When government officials abuse their authority, they will face the full consequences of federal law. The press conference was broadcast internationally, with news outlets around the world covering the story. The rapid progression from assault to comprehensive criminal investigation was being praised as an example of effective law enforcement. Daniel received messages of support from military colleagues throughout human space. Veterans organizations issued statements praising the investigation and expressing solidarity with the Williams family. Colonial governors commended Earth's justice system for holding corrupt officials accountable. That evening, Daniel visited his mother to provide an update on the day's events. Grace was overwhelmed by the scope of what had been uncovered through her case. "I never imagined that one police officer's crimes were connected to so much other corruption," Grace said. "It makes me feel like speaking out was even more important than I realized." Daniel explained that her courage had made it possible to expose a criminal network that might have continued operating for years. Other victims who had been too frightened to come forward were now cooperating with federal investigators. "Mom, you did not just get justice for yourself," Daniel said. "You got justice for everyone who was hurt by these criminals." As night fell over Millfield, the arrested suspects sat in federal detention facilities contemplating their futures. Their criminal network had been completely destroyed, and they faced decades in prison for their crimes. The investigation would continue for months, but the most dangerous criminals were already behind bars, where they could not hurt anyone else. The Galactic Council chambers on the neutral space station, Harmony, buzzed with activity as representatives from dozens of species gathered for their monthly assembly. What had started as a routine meeting about trade agreements had been transformed by news from Earth about the Grace Williams case. The human delegation found themselves at the center of unprecedented attention as alien civilizations evaluated Earth's response to corruption within their own government. Ambassador Elena Rodriguez represented humanity at the Galactic Council and was surprised by the level of interest in what she had assumed was a domestic legal matter. She had received urgent communications from Earth's diplomatic corps instructing her to be prepared to discuss the Williams case and its implications for humanity's standing in the galactic community. The Centauri delegation had formally requested time to address the assembly about the case. Ambassador Keth rose from his seat and activated the translation matrix that would allow all species to understand his comments. Honored representatives, Keth began. The Centauri Council wishes to commend the human species for their handling of the recent assault on Grace Williams, mother of their distinguished military commander. The chamber fell silent as alien representatives listened to Keth's analysis of humanity's response to corruption. The Centauri had been watching the case closely, because their own culture placed enormous importance on respect for elders and family, honor. When we first learned that a human law enforcement officer had brutally attacked an elderly citizen, we questioned whether humanity possessed the moral integrity necessary for advanced civilization. Keth continued. However, the swift and comprehensive response by human authorities has demonstrated their commitment to justice and accountability. The Andromedan representative, a crystalline being named Vex, requested permission to address the assembly. The Andromedans controlled crucial trade routes, and their opinion carried significant economic weight throughout the galaxy. The Andromedan Trade Consortium has been evaluating humanity's worthiness as commercial partners, Vex announced. This case has shown us that humans will hold their own officials accountable for criminal behavior. Such integrity is essential for trustworthy business relationships. Ambassador Rodriguez was amazed by the positive response from species that had previously been skeptical of human reliability. The Williams case was apparently being seen as a test of human civilization that Earth had passed successfully. On Earth, Daniel Williams was monitoring the galactic diplomatic response from his position at the FBI field office. The international implications of his mother's case continued to surprise him. What had begun as a personal quest for justice had become a demonstration of human values to the entire galaxy, Admiral. Hayes contacted Daniel with updates from military intelligence about alien reaction to the case. Commander, we are receiving diplomatic communications from species we have never dealt with before. They are expressing interest in establishing relationships with humanity based on our handling of this corruption case. The diplomatic benefits were significant but not the primary motivation for the investigation. Daniel remained focused on ensuring that all the criminals involved faced appropriate punishment for their crimes. Federal Prosecutor Wilson was preparing for the trial phase of the case. The evidence against Morrison and his co-conspirators was overwhelming, but she wanted to ensure that the legal proceedings demonstrated the highest standards of justice. Commander Williams, your strategic analysis has been crucial to this investigation, Wilson told Daniel. Would you be willing to testify about the patterns of corruption you identified? Daniel agreed to testify, knowing that his military expertise had helped expose the full scope of the criminal network. His ability to analyze complex intelligence had been essential for understanding how corruption operated across multiple organizations. The trial preparations were being watched by legal experts throughout human space. Colonial governments were interested in the precedents being set for holding corrupt officials accountable. The case was establishing new standards for federal prosecution of civil rights violations. Dr. Kim continued to provide medical testimony about Morrison's pattern of abuse. His analysis of injury patterns from multiple victims was helping prosecutors demonstrate the systematic nature of Morrison's crimes. Officer Morrison was not making mistakes or using poor judgment, Dr. Kim testified during pretrial hearings. He was deliberately inflicting pain and injury for his own psychological gratification. Meanwhile, Grace Williams was recovering well from her physical injuries but remained amazed by the global attention her case had received. She received thousands of messages of support from people around the world who had been inspired by her courage. The Williams family home had become a gathering place for civil rights activists and police reform advocates. Grace welcomed visitors who wanted to discuss how to prevent similar incidents from happening to other families. "I never thought my terrible experience would help so many other people," Grace told a group of community leaders. "But if it helps create positive change, then something good has come from my suffering." The case had indeed sparked widespread police reform efforts. Police departments throughout human space were reviewing their misconduct policies and implementing new accountability measures. The Williams case had become a symbol of the need for systemic change in law enforcement. Back at the Galactic Council, additional species were requesting to comment on the Williams case. The Rigelian Collective, a highly advanced technological civilization, praised humanity's use of scientific evidence and forensic analysis in the investigation. "The human approach to this corruption case demonstrates sophisticated investigative capabilities," the Rigelian representative observed. "Their combination of legal process and technological analysis shows impressive civilization development." The Vegan Empire, known for their strict moral codes, expressed approval of humanity's willingness to prosecute high-ranking officials for their crimes. In many less advanced civilizations, powerful individuals could commit crimes without facing consequences. "The fact that humans will arrest their own police officers and military contractors shows moral courage," the Vegan ambassador stated. "Such integrity makes them worthy partners for advanced civilizations." Ambassador Rodriguez was taking careful notes of these comments to report back to Earth's leadership. The diplomatic benefits of handling the Williams case properly were exceeding all expectations. The Altarian Federation, a species known for their economic expertise, announced that they were interested in expanding trade relationships with humanity based on their demonstrated commitment to honest business practices. The elimination of corruption in military contracting shows that humans can be trusted with large-scale commercial agreements, the Altarian representative explained. "We are prepared to negotiate expanded trade arrangements." Daniel received reports about these diplomatic developments and understood their significance for humanity's future. The way Earth had handled his mother's case was opening doors to new relationships and opportunities throughout the galaxy. Admiral Hayes contacted Daniel with additional intelligence about alien reactions. "Commander, military intelligence is reporting increased interest from potential allies who had previously been hesitant to work with humanity. The Williams case is being seen as proof of human integrity. The galactic implications extended beyond diplomacy into military cooperation. Several species that had been reluctant to share advanced technologies were reconsidering their positions based on humanity's demonstrated commitment to justice." The Proximan Defense Alliance, humanity's oldest military partnership, issued a statement praising Earth's handling of the corruption investigation. They specifically mentioned how the case demonstrated human values that made them reliable allies. As the Galactic Council session concluded, Ambassador Rodriguez received formal requests from 12 different species to begin negotiations for new diplomatic and commercial relationships. The Williams case had transformed humanity's reputation from questionable newcomers to respected members of the galactic community. Daniel understood that his mother's courage in speaking out against injustice had accomplished more than just personal justice. Grace Williams had helped establish humanity's moral credibility with advanced alien civilizations, opening possibilities for cooperation and growth that would benefit all human colonies. The case that began with a racist police officer assaulting an elderly woman had become a defining moment for humanity's place in the galaxy. Earth had passed a crucial test of civilization, and the benefits would last for generations. The federal courthouse was packed with observers from around the world, as Judge Patricia Coleman prepared to announce the sentences for Jake Morrison and his co-conspirators. The trial had lasted 6 weeks and attracted international media attention as a test of whether Earth's justice system could hold corrupt officials accountable. Daniel Williams sat in the front row next to his mother, both of them waiting to see if justice would truly be served. Prosecutor Wilson had presented overwhelming evidence of Morrison's crimes. The jury had seen multiple videos of the assault on Grace Williams, heard testimony from other victims, and reviewed medical evidence of systematic abuse. The defense had no credible response to the mountain of evidence against their client. Judge Coleman reviewed her notes before addressing the court. She was a veteran federal judge with 30 years of experience, and she understood the significance of this case for both domestic justice and international relations. Officer Morrison, Judge Coleman began, you used your position of authority to commit crimes against the citizens you swore to protect. Your assault on Grace Williams was not an isolated incident, but part of a pattern of abuse that violated the constitutional rights of multiple victims. Morrison stood silently as the judge detailed his crimes. He had lost weight during the trial and looked nothing like the arrogant officer who had attacked an elderly woman 3 months earlier. The evidence against him had been so overwhelming that even his own lawyers had advised him to accept responsibility for his actions. Court sentences you to 8 years in federal prison for civil rights violations, to be followed by 3 years of supervised release, Judge Coleman announced. You will also pay restitution to your victims and are permanently barred from working in law enforcement. Grace Williams felt a sense of relief as she heard the sentence. 8 years seemed appropriate for the crimes Morrison had committed, and knowing he could never be a police officer again would protect other innocent people. Lieutenant Brooks received a sentence of 6 years for his role in covering up Morrison's crimes. The 2 other supervisors who had participated in the conspiracy were sentenced to 4 years each. The judge made it clear that officials who abused their authority would face serious consequences. Kevin, Morrison, and the Titan security executives received even longer sentences for their contractor fraud scheme. The financial crimes they committed had stolen millions of dollars from military budgets that were supposed to protect human colonies. Their sentences ranged from 10 to 15 years in federal prison. The corruption exposed by this investigation represents a betrayal of public trust that cannot be tolerated, Judge Coleman stated. These sentences reflect the seriousness of crimes committed by those who abuse government authority. After the sentencing, Daniel and Grace Williams met with the media outside the courthouse. Grace had initially been reluctant to speak publicly, but she understood that her voice could help other victims find courage to seek justice. I want to thank everyone who supported my family during this difficult time, Grace said. I hope that my experience helps create positive changes that will protect other families from similar attacks. Daniel stood proudly beside his mother as she addressed reporters from around the world. The woman who had been brutally assaulted for no reason had become a symbol of courage and dignity in the face of injustice. My mother's strength throughout this ordeal has been an inspiration, Daniel added. She turned a terrible experience into an opportunity to create positive change for others. The case had indeed created significant changes in law enforcement practices. Police departments throughout human space had implemented new accountability measures and training programs designed to prevent abuse of authority. The Williams case had become a standard example of how corruption could be exposed and prosecuted. Admiral Hayes contacted Daniel with news about the broader implications of the case's conclusion. Commander, the successful prosecution has strengthened our diplomatic relationships throughout the galaxy. Several species have formally requested expanded cooperation agreements based on our demonstrated commitment to justice. The galactic diplomatic benefits were substantial. The Zentari Council had announced new military cooperation agreements with humanity. The Andromedan Trade Consortium had approved expanded commercial relationships. Other alien civilizations were expressing interest in partnerships that had previously been unthinkable. Grace Williams used the financial settlement from her civil lawsuit to establish the Grace Williams Foundation for Justice and Accountability. The foundation provided legal assistance to victims of police misconduct and supported training programs for law enforcement officers. I want to turn my painful experience into something that helps other people, Grace explained at the foundation's launch ceremony. No one should have to face corruption and abuse alone. The foundation quickly became a model for similar organizations throughout human space. Colonial governments provided funding and support for programs based on Grace's initiative. Her assault had sparked a movement for police accountability that spread across all human settlements. Dr. Kim continued to work with the foundation as a medical consultant, helping to document cases of police brutality and providing expert testimony in civil rights cases. His involvement demonstrated how respected community members could support victims of official misconduct. Grace Williams showed all of us how to stand up to injustice with dignity and courage, Dr. Kim said. Her example inspired others to speak out against corruption. Helen Carter, the neighbor who had recorded the original assault, became an advocate for citizen journalism and police accountability. Her quick thinking in documenting Morrison's crimes had been crucial for the successful prosecution. Everyone with a phone can be a witness to injustice, Helen said during community meetings about police reform. We all have a responsibility to document and report misconduct when we see it. Federal prosecutor Wilson received recognition for her handling of the Williams case and was promoted to head the Civil Rights Division for her district. The successful prosecution had established new precedents for holding corrupt officials accountable. The Williams case proved that no one is above the law, Wilson said. Whether you wear a badge or hold a government contract, criminal behavior will have consequences. Agent Santos was also promoted and became the lead investigator for a new federal task force focused on corruption in law enforcement. Her work on the Williams case had demonstrated the importance of thorough investigation and strategic analysis. The police department that had employed Morrison underwent complete restructuring under federal oversight. New leadership was installed, training programs were revised, and accountability measures were strengthened. The department became a model for reform efforts throughout the region. 5 years after the assault, Grace Williams received an invitation that surprised and honored her. The United Earth Defense Force Academy requested that she speak at their graduation ceremony for new military officers. Standing before hundreds of future military leaders, including several alien cadets participating in exchange programs, Grace delivered a speech that captured the lessons of her experience. True strength is not measured by the power you hold over others, Grace told the graduating cadets. True strength is measured by how you use your power to protect those who cannot protect themselves. The audience gave her a standing ovation that lasted several minutes. Admiral Daniel Williams, who had been promoted after his exemplary handling of the corruption investigation, watched proudly from the stage as his mother received recognition for her courage. Your mother's example will be taught in military academies throughout human space, Admiral Hayes told Daniel after the ceremony. She showed the galaxy what human integrity looks like. The assault that had seemed like a random act of cruelty had become a defining moment for humanity's reputation in the galactic community. Grace Williams's courage in seeking justice had proven that humans would hold their own officials accountable for criminal behavior. Alien civilizations that had once questioned human worthiness now viewed Earth as a reliable partner for advanced cooperation. The diplomatic and military benefits of properly handling the Williams case continued to grow as humanity expanded into new regions of space. Grace Williams lived to see her terrible experience transformed into lasting positive change. Her foundation helped hundreds of victims seek justice. Police departments implemented reforms that protected citizens, and humanity's reputation for integrity opened doors to partnerships that would benefit generations. The racist cop who thought he could assault an elderly woman without consequences had learned that justice could not be stopped when good people refused to remain silent. Grace Williams had turned her moment of greatest vulnerability into a demonstration of strength that echoed across the galaxy. Jake Morrison sat at his desk in the police station, staring at the incident report he needed to write. His hands shook slightly as he typed, knowing that what he put down would determine his future. The truth was simple. He had attacked an innocent elderly woman for no good reason. But the truth would end his career and probably land him in prison. He decided to lie. Morrison wrote that he had observed a suspicious person attempting to gain entry to a vehicle. He claimed that Grace Williams had been acting erratically and had refused to cooperate when questioned. According to his false report, she had become combative and aggressive, forcing him to use necessary restraint to protect himself and the public. Lieutenant Carl Brooks read the report without much interest. He had been Morrison's supervisor for 3 years and trusted him completely. Brooks had his own biases and found it easy to believe that an elderly black woman might be involved in criminal activity. He signed off on the report without asking any questions. "Good work, Morrison," Brooks said. "We cannot have people thinking they can commit crimes in broad daylight without consequences." Morrison felt relieved that his supervisor believed his story. He thought the incident would be forgotten in a few days. He had no idea that cell phone videos were already spreading across the internet like wildfire. Detective Lisa Murphy worked in the Public Relations Department of the police force. Her job was to manage the department's image and handle media inquiries. She was having a quiet evening when her phone started ringing nonstop. Reporters were calling about a video showing police brutality against an elderly woman. Murphy quickly found the videos online and watched them with growing horror. The footage clearly showed Morrison attacking Grace Williams without provocation. There was no way to spin this as justified police action. The old woman was obviously innocent, and Morrison had clearly used excessive force. She called Brooks immediately. "Lieutenant, we have a serious problem. There are videos of the Morrison incident all over social media. This looks really bad." Brooks was annoyed by the call. "Murphy, you worry too much." Morrison followed proper procedure. Sometimes force is necessary to maintain order. "Sir, have you seen the videos? The woman was just picking up groceries. She was not threatening anyone." Brooks refused to watch the footage. In his mind, Morrison was a good officer who would not lie in his report. He told Murphy to handle the media with the standard response about ongoing investigations. Murphy knew this approach would fail. The videos were too clear and the public reaction was too strong. She drafted a statement defending Morrison's actions, but her heart was not in it. She had joined the police force to serve justice, not to cover up crimes. At Millfield General Hospital, Grace Williams lay in bed with her wrist in a cast. The doctors had documented multiple injuries, including the broken wrist, bruised ribs, and trauma from the assault. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, the emergency room physician, was appalled by what she saw. "Mrs. Williams, I need to ask you some questions about how you were injured," Dr. Mitchell said gently. Grace told her story in a quiet voice, still shaken by the experience. Dr. Mitchell carefully documented every detail in the medical record. She had treated victims of police brutality before and knew how important proper documentation would be. The hospital's social worker, Janet Lee, visited Grace to offer support services. Janet had seen the videos online and recognized the victim immediately. She made sure that Grace understood her rights and connected her with legal aid organizations. "Mrs. Williams, what happened to you was wrong," Janet said. "There are people who want to help you get justice." Grace was not interested in causing trouble. She had lived through segregation and civil rights struggles. She had learned to keep her head down and avoid confrontation with authorities. But something about this incident felt different. The attack had been so unprovoked and so cruel that she could not simply let it pass. Meanwhile, the videos continued to spread online. The hashtag Grace Williams was trending on every major social media platform. People from around the world were sharing the footage and expressing outrage at Morrison's actions. News stations were picking up the story and requesting interviews. Murphy watched the situation spiral out of control from her office. She tried calling Brooks again, but he refused to change the department's position. He was convinced that supporting Morrison was the right thing to do, regardless of what the videos showed. The police union representative, Officer Tony Ricci, arrived at the station to meet with Morrison. Ricci's job was to protect officers from false accusations and ensure they received fair treatment. He watched the videos with Morrison and shook his head. "Jake, this does not look good," Ricci said honestly. "The videos show you attacking an elderly woman who was clearly not a threat." Morrison stuck to his false story. "She was acting suspicious near that car. I had to investigate. She became combative when I tried to question her." Ricci had seen enough police misconduct cases to recognize a lie when he heard one. He advised Morrison to get a lawyer and prepare for serious consequences. The union would provide legal support, but they could not make the videos disappear. Local news reporter Amanda Price was preparing a story about the incident for the evening broadcast. She had interviewed several neighbors who witnessed the attack. Everyone described Grace Williams as a kind, gentle woman who would never hurt anyone. "Grace has been a pillar of this community for decades," said Helen Carter, who had recorded the original video. "What that officer did to her was evil and inexcusable." Price also spoke with Dr. Kim, who provided additional footage from his phone. The doctor was clear in his assessment. Morrison had attacked an innocent woman without justification. The story aired on the 6 o'clock news and was immediately picked up by national networks. The contrast between Morrison's official report and the video evidence was stark. Legal experts interviewed on television predicted that Morrison would face federal civil rights charges. By midnight, the story had reached international news outlets. People around the world were asking how American police could treat elderly citizens so brutally. The incident was becoming a symbol of systemic problems in law enforcement. Grace Williams finally fell asleep in her hospital bed, unaware that her assault had become global news. She did not know that her son Daniel was already on his way back to Earth, or that her attackers' lies were about to be exposed. She only knew that she had been hurt for no reason, and that someone needed to be held accountable for what happened to her.